In this world, the heavy armored swordsman is recognized as a defense-focused class, whose main role is to draw enemy attention to himself and thus protect the party's allies. However, when compared to other defensive classes, he shows little versatility and cannot easily adapt to different situations. His greatest and most serious weakness is his extremely low offensive power, which makes his development and training slow and quite complicated. Because of these clear limitations, heavy armored swordsmen have become increasingly ignored and looked down upon by society in general. The class has come to be seen as incomplete, almost like a flawed profession that brings misfortune and disadvantage to anyone unlucky enough to receive it. However, the protagonist Elymas experiences this reality in a completely different way. His path of evolution always seems connected to a strange sense of familiarity. Whenever Elymas learns something new or witnesses events in this world, he has the vague impression that he has already seen or lived through it before, as if memories from another existence are slowly beginning to awaken within his mind. This subtly suggests the emergence of memories from a past life. Intense conflicts and battles of grand proportions arise with completely unexpected frequency in this world. In such situations, Elymas is almost always forced to fight alone against his enemies, plunging into confrontations that constantly push him to the absolute limit between life and death. The pressure of these fights comes not only from high-level monstrous creatures, but also from equally dangerous human opponents, such as extremely skilled mages and experienced swordsmen who master refined combat techniques. Even so, regardless of the type of ability, strategy, or magic his enemies use, Elymas' shield remains unshakable. In no situation is it ever truly broken or overcome, as if there were an impossible barrier surrounding his defense. Still, despite this seemingly abnormal advantage, Elymas cannot understand the origin of the images that continue to appear in his mind. They are disconnected fragments, brief flashes of memories that do not belong to his present, like scattered pieces of something much larger that he still cannot fully perceive. Amid this turmoil of conflicts and doubts, the sacred blessing ceremony for the heir of the Elymas family finally takes place officially. It is precisely during this ritual, at the moment he is supposed to simply receive his blessing, that all of his past life memories fully awaken within Elymas. The revelation strikes him overwhelmingly, leaving him in shock as he realizes that the world he lives in is exactly identical to the virtual reality game called Magical World, which he obsessively played in his previous life. His initial excitement reaches extreme levels when the system grants him the profession of heavy armored swordsman. In the original game, this was a class he always considered not only the strongest in terms of defense, but also one of the most unconventional, capable of withstanding virtually any situation when properly developed. However, this intense joy does not last long, quickly being shattered by his father's explosive reaction. The family patriarch is immediately shocked and soon after is consumed by uncontrollable rage upon discovering that his heir has received a profession considered useless in the eyes of nobility and local tradition. With this rigid and inflexible reaction, Elymas begins to understand that the strategic mindset of that world is extremely outdated and limited. Even while calmly trying to explain that the heavy armored swordsman possesses superior defense, endurance, and survivability attributes, Elymas is completely ignored. His father accepts no argument. Consumed by anger and shame, he even goes so far as to punch Elymas in the face, treating that profession as an unforgivable stain on the family's honor, something that must be hidden at all costs to preserve the prestige of the Elymas. The heavy and suffocating atmosphere of the ceremony is unexpectedly changed by the arrival of Molly's, a beautiful young woman from a secondary branch of the Elymas family. Although she had once been Elymas' childhood friend, they were separated for many years due to the strict status differences within the family itself. Ignoring all judgmental stares, comments, and contemptuous whispers around her, Molly steps forward with determination and courage, asking to undergo the blessing ritual. Even while still immersed in discomfort and disappointment caused by recent events, the head of the Elymas family finally authorizes the start of the ritual. Everything proceeds without any apparent issues, and Elymas' negative feeling is confirmed at the moment the system announces Molly's received profession. She obtains the Sacred Sword class, an extremely respected, rare profession fully oriented toward offense. Molly's does not hide her overwhelming confidence and even subtly provokes Elma, as if she had absorbed all the talent and potential he might have had. Elma, in turn, remains completely silent. His expression becomes more serious and concerned, as he fears that the sudden rise of someone from a secondary branch will only further increase his father's anger and pressure against him. In contrast, the head of the Edervin family immediately shows satisfaction with Molly's result, completely ignoring the family's internal traditions and hierarchies. He makes a shocking decision and immediately adopts her as the official heir. Taking advantage of this sudden change of circumstances, Molly's reinforces her new adoptive father's words and further belittles Elma, stating with absolute conviction that he would never have the ability to take on such important responsibilities. This abrupt change of leadership shocks everyone present, but also makes clear the cruel and merciless logic of that world, where only strength and practical usefulness are truly valued. The most devastating moment occurs when Elma's own father coldly and definitively rejects him, as if he had never belonged to that family. He considers the heavy armored swordsman class an unforgivable disgrace to the Edervin lineage and orders Elma's immediate expulsion from the mansion without any hesitation. Even in the face of Elma Ma's desperate pleas and his sincere attempts to explain the true potential of that class, the patriarch does not back down from his decision and rejects everything with even greater emotional violence. As if that were not enough, he also threatens Elma with death if he ever tries to pose as a member of the family again, or use the Edervin name under any circumstance, completely and irreversibly severing all blood ties. That very same day, under a strong and constant rain that seemed to mirror the weight of his expulsion, only the old butler says goodbye to Elma in silence, handing him a small amount of his savings as a final gesture of kindness. From the mansion, Molly's watches the entire scene with a cold smile full of superiority. From that moment on, Elma's true journey as a heavy armored swordsman truly begins a path far harsher, lonelier, and more unpredictable than he could ever have imagined. After losing all his titles, Elma is placed in a horse-drawn carriage and taken to an unfamiliar house, officially beginning his solitary life as an outcast. In contrast to his former comfortable life, the outside world is loud, hostile, and clearly reveals all its harshness. Even after losing his family, his status, and facing society's prejudice, Elma does not despair. He maintains firm confidence because he knows a secret that no one else does. The heavy armored swordsman is, in fact, the most powerful class of all. Realizing that this world has several historical and geographical differences compared to the game he once knew, Elma carefully opens his status screen to confirm whether his class system remains the same. With 5 initial skill points, he finds various random options such as enhanced defense and basic swordsmanship. However, using his strategic experience, he ignores the safer options and invests all of his points into the fixed skill tree of the heavy armor oath, which is usually considered useless and difficult to master. This bold choice pays off immediately, advancing the tree to level 5 and unlocking the fortress counterattack skill, while also greatly increasing his defense and creating a solid foundation for future growth. After that, Elma acquires the specific equipment for his class and begins exploring the world cautiously, staying calm but aware that he must grow stronger quickly. Without wasting time, he decides to enter combat to test his abilities for the first time. His first opponent is Arana, a monster classified as Exorcist level. Elma handles the situation calmly and activates his barrier counterattack skill, which converts defense into damage whenever he successfully nullifies an enemy attack. The result is immediate and impressive. With just a single successful impact, the monster is instantly defeated. With that, Elma obtains a level 2 magic stone, a small reward, but an important milestone at the beginning of his journey. Elma hears someone else shouting for help. He runs toward the voice and soon finds an adventurer being pursued. Upon arriving at the scene, he realizes that the forest is completely overrun with a huge number of frogs. Faced with that situation, Elma states that he will handle it. The adventurer, who had been desperately running for his life, asks whether Elma truly believes he can face all those monsters. For a moment, he even thinks Elma is simply overconfident. However, Elymas replies that he is not. He admits that he had just leveled up for the first time in his entire life. Upon hearing this, all hope vanishes from the adventurer, since how could he trust his life to someone even weaker than himself? In his mind, it seemed impossible for a beginner to defeat such a large number of monsters. Not even heavy armor would be enough to protect him from so many enemies at once. So he insists that the best option is to flee while there is still a chance. Even in the face of the adventurer's insistence, Elymas remains completely calm. He explains that barrier counterattack is far from a perfect skill. As previously stated, the damage dealt by the barrier when blocking an attack corresponds to the user's own defense points. This means his defense must be higher than the enemy's offensive power for the skill to function properly. Otherwise, the effect will not activate, leaving the user completely vulnerable to attacks. Still, the adventurer continues urging Elymas to run immediately. However, before either of them can escape, all the creatures rush forward at once and launch their attacks against him. Elymas comments that barrier counterattack can indeed become useless and extremely dangerous against very strong opponents or unknown monsters. However, since he was reborn inside the game, he knows each one of those creatures perfectly. Thanks to that knowledge, everything unfolds exactly as he expected. The barrier counterattack completely blocks the attacks from the swarm of frogs, defeating each one in sequence, leaving the adventurer completely shocked, unable to believe what he has just witnessed. He asks how Elymas was able to defeat so many frogs and who he really is. Elymas begins by answering only his first name, but stops before revealing his surname, immediately remembering the threat that his head would be cut off if he ever mentioned it. Thus, he simply replies firmly that his name is Elymas. After defeating every monster that appeared along the way, Elymas finally reaches level 8. As a reward for leveling up, he earns the title Unshakable. After checking his status again, he realizes it's probably safe to believe that this world's system works the same way as the one in Magic Worlds. At that moment, the other boy introduces himself. His name is Elymas. He explains that he left his peaceful little village to become an adventurer, only to discover that no one would trust him until he reached level 3 on his own. Because of that, he fell into despair, unable to find a single party willing to accept him. Elymas thanks Elymas for saving his life. He says he'd like to do something to repay him, but Elymas replies that there's no need to worry about it. To him, everything worked out perfectly because it gave him a great opportunity to level up. Even so, he decides to keep the magic stones dropped by the monsters. Then Elymas asks if the two of them could form an adventuring party together. He believes it would benefit both of them. After all, he assumes Elymas is also struggling to find work on his own, especially since defense-focused classes usually aren't the most popular among adventurers. Hearing that, Elymas can't help but remember the cruel words his own father once said about his class. In front of everyone, he had been called useless and worthless. Even when he tried to explain that his class had the highest HP and defense, his father insisted that none of it mattered. Returning to the conversation, Elymas tells Elymas that he thinks he's an incredible person. He promises he'll make others change the way they see that class as well. However, Elymas declines the offer. Elymas asks why he won't accept his proposal. Elymas explains that if he follows that path, he'll never grow the way he wants on his own. Even so, he admits that Elymas's reasoning makes sense. Normally, defensive classes can only show their true potential by drawing enemy attacks and protecting their teammates. However, if Elymas started traveling with a party, he would have to split the experience among everyone. That would go completely against the way he plans to level up. On top of that, Elymas has other goals. He wants to obtain new equipment, learn different skills, and earn many titles throughout his journey. He doesn't know if anyone would believe everything he says, but he also doesn't have time to waste standing around. There's still a long way to go before he can become a truly powerful heavy knight. After the two of them leave the area, Elymas keeps trying to convince Elymas to form a party with him. He admits that Elymas' method is truly impressive, but believes that this way of growing has its limits and won't work forever. Suddenly, as they continue walking, they hear a strange sound coming from nearby. Little by little, the atmosphere grows heavier, and both of them realize that something is probably hiding among the trees. Then, a gigantic spider appears before them. Elymas is completely shocked. unable to understand why a creature like that is in a place like this. Meanwhile, Elymas checks the monster's status and notices something terrifying. The creature is level 16. It is an Ariandype, a monster whose level is exactly twice Elymas' current level. He realizes it managed to stay hidden the entire time by using its sliding steps skill. On top of that, the Ariandype has a poison that inflicts slow and also possesses the Flaming Claw skill. Elymas' wall reflection ability is practically useless against enemies that are much stronger than him. For it to activate, his defense has to be at least twice as high as the incoming attack. Otherwise, the skill simply doesn't work. If Elymas were hit directly by the Ariandype's Flaming Claw, he would most likely be defeated in a single strike. Eris realizes this situation happened because of him and decides to take responsibility. He says he'll keep the beast busy while Elymas escapes. However, Elymas tells him there's no reason to worry and asks him to leave this battle to him. He knows defeating the creature isn't impossible. Eris warns him once again, saying that a beginner adventurer doesn't stand a chance against an Ariandype. But after checking his status, Elymas realizes he still has 7 skill points he earned earlier. Without wasting a second, he invests all of them into Heavy Armor Oath. By unlocking the Disarm skill, his strength increases even further. This skill temporarily lowers an enemy's attack whenever he successfully lands a hit. More specifically, it reduces the target's attack by 20% for 1 minute. Elymas knows he'll need that skill to defeat the Ariandype. He barely avoids the creature's first attack, but he's thrilled to finally be facing a monster of this level. The giant spider rushes at him with incredible speed, attacking relentlessly without leaving any openings. Elymas blocks every strike as carefully as he can, making sure not to take a direct hit. Then the Ariandype starts preparing another fire attack. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Elymas deliberately chooses to take the hit. He knows he has to take that risk to activate Disarm and reduce the monster's attack. The attack doesn't deal much damage, but Elymas realizes the attack reduction has most likely been applied. When the Ariandype tries to use its fire attack again, he dodges and quickly closes the distance. During the battle, Elymas is pleased to discover that the beast's poison attack consumes 7 MP, while Flaming Claw only uses 5 MP. Taking advantage of that information, he activates Disarm again and successfully applies the effect a second time. As a result, the Ariandype's attack is reduced by a total of 40%. On top of that, the unshakable title Elymas earned increases his defense by 10%, narrowing the gap between them even further. To Elymas, that battle proves that differences in level and abilities can be overcome with knowledge and the right strategy. He attacks the beast to draw its attention and starts running away. After creating a safe distance, Elymas quickly turns around and activates his wall skill, preparing a finishing blow capable of ending the battle in a single hit. A short time later, he defeats the Ariandype and receives a huge reward for his victory. His level rises to 12, and he also earns 4 skill points that he can spend however he wants. However, when he tries to invest those points into heavy armor, he realizes he can't do so at that moment. Meanwhile, Eris is still amazed by everything he just witnessed. He asks who Elymas really is, and says he's now convinced that Elymas can truly grow stronger on his own. As far as Eris is concerned, there was never any reason to worry about him. Suddenly, Elymas begins to feel sick because the poison effect is still active in his body. Realizing what's happening, Eris decides to escort him back to the city to make sure he gets home safely. After dropping Elymas off at his house, Eris says goodbye, telling him they're sure to meet again. Once inside, Elymas heads straight to bed without wasting any time. But while resting, he can't stop remembering the harsh words his father said before throwing him out of the house. Those memories wake him up once again. The following day, after defeating the Ariandype, Elymas finally heads to the Rondalm Adventurers Guild to officially register as an adventurer. When he arrives, he introduces himself and begins the registration process. However, as soon as the people there notice his class, they all start looking at him with contempt. Many of the adventurers laugh after learning that he's just a heavy knight. To them, that class has no future. Despite everyone's reaction, the receptionist continues the registration as usual. After signing the necessary paperwork, Elymas is officially assigned rank F, the starting rank for adventurers. Even though it's the lowest rank, He's happy to finally be recognized as an official adventurer. In this world, there are 7 different adventurer ranks. In addition, entering a dungeon requires a party to have at least one rank E adventurer. Elymas also learns that his rank directly affects how many skill points he can invest in Heavy Armor Oath. Because of that, he knows he has to reach rank E as quickly as possible. Elymas then asks if there are any adventuring parties looking for new members. The receptionist tells him there aren't any openings at the moment. Before leaving, however, Elymas hands her a bag filled with magic stones. He explains that he wants to exchange all of them for money. His magic bag allows him to store a large number of items, making it much easier to carry everything he collected. When everyone sees how many magic stones Elymas brought back, they're stunned. After all, he gathered all of them by himself without relying on any other adventurer. Elymas explains that he completed everything on his own and included all the details in his mission report. As a result, many people begin wondering what is really going on with that young man. Even so, plenty of them still believe he must be cheating somehow. Before long, Elymas finishes his registration and now has enough money to cover his expenses during his journey. But what happens next gets the Magic World's player inside Elymas completely excited. He asks the receptionist if there's a promotion quest available that he can complete to raise his rank. She tells him there is. The scene then shifts to a group of adventurers gathered at a cemetery near the city. One of the men comments that some strange clown decided to join the raid quest. According to him, that adventurer is probably Elymas. The man explains that many beginners make the mistake of underestimating guilds and monsters, believing that being an adventurer is easy. He then asks if Elymas really defeated an Ariandite by himself. Before Elymas can answer, another adventurer tells him to stop talking nonsense. He explains that an adventurer's life isn't nearly as easy as Elymas seems to think. Determined to show him reality, he decides to teach the young adventurer a lesson. And that's how episode 2 comes to an end. If you made it this far, comment rank F. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you next week with more of this anime. Bye. Elymas quickly realizes that the situation is much worse than he expected. Taking part in a raid mission is a rare opportunity to increase his rank, and he knows he cannot waste such an important chance. Because of that, he lowers his head and asks everyone to try working together during the mission. However, his attitude does not please the man, who simply calls Teal so the expedition can finally begin. Without wasting any time, Elymas draws his sword and activates the search skill. It is explained that this ability allows him to detect nearby creatures, making it a very rare skill among low-level adventurers. Shortly after, he senses the enemies and reports that there is a horde of around 30 monsters. Gauten praises his ability, but Elymas replies that he was lucky enough to obtain such an excellent skill and hopes it will be enough to earn his promotion to rank E. Teal begins mocking the protagonist. To him, Elymas has always been strange, and his unusual behavior has led to several rumors within the guild. While looking at the boy's equipment, he concludes that Elymas must belong to the Red Mage class. This class has great physical abilities and can also learn offensive spells, healing magic, and a wide variety of support spells. Even so, Teal says he feels sorry for Elymas for being stuck with the worst class that exists. The boy thanks him for his concern, but replies that he really likes the class he received. Teal believes he is only trying to act strong and says it would be better if he stayed out of the way and did not interfere with the rest of the group. Elymas knows very well that the Red Mage is considered one of the hardest classes to master. At first glance, it seems capable of doing everything. But in the game, it was known as a class that could perform many roles without truly standing out in any of them. However, that world was not a game. Even so, it was natural that most people would prefer choosing easier classes to use. Meanwhile, Gauten decides to evaluate the entire situation before taking action. The huge undead horde is being led by a ghoul head. Since he is a rank D adventurer, he believes he can defeat the leader alone. He then orders everyone to keep their distance and only deal with the weaker monsters. He also makes it clear that he will not protect anyone who interferes in his battle. After hearing this, everyone becomes uneasy because they expected a completely different strategy. Elymas remembers that a ghoul head is usually around level 30. Although it does not have many dangerous direct attacks, its Hades breath ability is a major problem because it can turn corpses into low-level specters. Even so, Gauten is a rank D adventurer around level 40. If everything goes as expected, he should be able to win the fight. Looking at the people around him, Elmer realizes the situation is not encouraging at all. Some adventurers are overwhelmed by fear, while others show excessive confidence. There are also beginners who imagined that joining a raid would be simple, along with a careless leader who barely worries about his own group. From Elma's perspective, their chances of survival are around 80%. In a game, that would be an acceptable rate. But in that world, dying meant much more than just receiving a penalty. Concerned about everything, Elma asks Gauten if he should provide more detailed instructions to the group. The man, not understanding what he means, asks him to repeat what he said. Elma explains that the report about the undead horde might not be completely accurate and warns that it could be too late if they only act after the worst happens. Everyone is surprised to see an adventurer like Elma giving suggestions to Gauten. The man immediately reacts. Angry, he asks who Elma thinks he is to speak that way and tell him how he should lead the mission. The boy quickly explains that he is not trying to give orders. He only feels insecure because he is still a weak adventurer without enough experience. Then he lowers his head again and asks the man for help. Gauten says he is not anyone's babysitter, but despite complaining, he agrees to explain how he plans to handle the battle. At that moment, Teal approaches and says that only unlucky people like Elma would be afraid of such weak undead. He also mocks him, saying he never expected the boy to almost cry in front of Gauten before the fight had even started. Although almost everyone is nervous as well, nobody has the courage to respond. Right after that, Teal says he does not need to hear any instructions. According to him, cowards should simply get out of the way and run to the back lines. Meanwhile, Elma notices that the undead are finally appearing in front of them. The moment he sees the monsters, even Teal becomes frightened. Without hesitation, Elma draws his weapon and prepares to face the creatures. While Teal remains frozen in fear, Gauten notices the movement and asks what Elma is doing. He then orders Teal and Paul to clear a path so he can face the leader of the horde. While observing the enemy, Elma notices that the weapon carried by the monster does not seem to have any special characteristics. Because of that, he believes they might still be able to handle the situation. Then, Elma turns to the rest of the group and warns that everyone will need to fight the followers of the giant-headed monster. The news makes the adventurers even more nervous since none of them have ever faced creatures like these before. They know the enemies might only be ordinary specters, but they also understand that if they end up surrounded, escaping from the battle will become extremely difficult. Everyone expected Gauten to support the rest of the group, but he keeps all his attention focused on the leader of the horde. As Elma watches the situation, he understands exactly what is happening. It is not difficult to see why everyone looks so discouraged. This is the first time they have faced a horde of this size. To make matters worse, they are undead creatures with terrifying appearances, and nobody received clear instructions on how to act. Elma completely understands why everyone is so afraid. Without wasting any time, Elma asks everyone to pay close attention to what he is about to say. He then tells them to form teams of 3 people. He explains that if they stay together and protect each other, those specters will not be able to defeat them easily. The adventurers agree with the idea, but ask what he plans to do during the fight. Elma answers that he will stay on the front line and draw the undead toward him. At that moment, some monsters appear behind him. Even so, Elma blocks every attack without showing any difficulty. Right after that, he disarms each enemy and delivers the final blow, defeating all 3 at once. Shortly after, more undead appear. Using his shield wall, he manages to eliminate several of them with incredible ease. With surprising calmness, he simply tells everyone not to worry. He explains that the main role of a heavy knight is exactly to attract large groups of enemies and keep the monsters' attention focused on themselves. He also says that if anything unexpected happens, he wants to be informed immediately so he can help the rest of the team. While speaking, Elma continues defeating one undead after another as if he were fighting extremely weak opponents. The adventurers watch him in amazement at the level of skill he is showing. After defeating so many enemies, Elymas finally reaches level 16. When checking his progress, he notices that his parry skill is working even better than he expected. Fighting such a large number of monsters at that level is proving to be an extremely effective way to grow stronger. As he checks his attributes, he sees that they are all increasing steadily, confirming that his strategy is truly working. The adventurers are even more surprised because Elymas had said he would only attract the monsters toward them. In reality, he is defeating almost all of the specters by himself, without showing any sign of difficulty. Little by little, everyone begins to fear Elymas more than the undead themselves, since his strength seems far beyond what anyone expected. After some time, the group starts showing signs of exhaustion from fighting so many specters without stopping. The battle has already been going on for a long time, and the fatigue is becoming obvious. Looking across the battlefield, Elymas realizes that most of the horde has already been defeated. Some adventurers ask if they should help Gauten against the ghoul head. Elymas replies that the monster is at a much higher level than them, and says it is better to leave that fight to Gauten, preventing anyone else from putting themselves in danger. Meanwhile, Gauten is engaged in an extremely intense battle against the leader of the horde. At one point, he manages to send the ghoul head flying with a powerful strike, and before the monster can recover, he lands another devastating attack. Furious, the ghoul head reacts with even more violence and charges forward without hesitation. Gauten then orders the two boys to lure the specters closer to him, but both of them become completely frozen with fear. The man gets angry at their hesitation and asks why they are being so cowardly. He also warns that if they continue acting like that, he will not allow them to rank up. The two understand what he means, but explain that they are afraid of getting too close to the ghoul head and being hit during the battle. Besides, they believe they can still provide support while keeping some distance. Just before suffering another attack, Gauten dodges at the last moment and lands a direct hit on the creature's face. Watching the battle, Elymas realizes that the ghoul head is very close to defeat. In his opinion, Gauten should be able to finish off the enemy's remaining HP with just one more attack. However, the specters are still interfering with the fight. Suddenly, the monster begins devouring all the undead around it. Within moments, its health almost returns completely. Elymas is extremely surprised to discover that the ghoul head possesses the Consume Corpses ability. This skill allows it to recover HP by devouring corpses and other undead, but the chance of a ghoul head being born with this power is extremely low. Even so, something seems wrong. From what Elymas knows about this ability, it should not allow so many undead to be consumed at once and restore almost all of its health. It seemed far more dangerous than it should have been and completely different from how the skill normally worked. Meanwhile, Gauten celebrates after realizing that all the specters were devoured by the leader of the horde itself. In his view, this meant that all the enemies around them had disappeared, creating the perfect opportunity to end the battle once and for all. Without thinking twice, he rushes forward to finish off the enemy. Elymas immediately shouts for him to wait, but Gauten completely ignores the warning, believing victory is already guaranteed. The next moment, something completely unexpected happens. The ghoul head's body begins changing right before everyone's eyes. Its muscles grow larger, its presence becomes far more threatening, and a terrifying aura surrounds its entire body. The pressure released by the creature grows to a frightening level, causing even the adventurers to instinctively step back. Even Elymas is impressed by the strength the monster begins to display. The ghoul head had leveled up after consuming all the undead around it. In just a few seconds, it evolves from level 33 to level 40, becoming a much greater threat than anyone expected to face. Everyone is completely shocked by the overwhelming power now radiating from the monster. Even in the magical world, no one knows the exact conditions required for an existence to evolve. Faced with that situation, everyone could only accept that they had simply gotten unlucky. Gordon was sent to hold the front line, while Leos, Stan, Kale, and Wall were ordered to make the Decabas tree grow. Even terrified, one of them questioned what they could possibly do against a monster of that level, since using magic would mean instant death. However, they were reminded that if Gordon fell, no one would make it out alive. Their only option was to fight until the end. During the battle, Gordon was hit by the paralysis status effect. Without wasting time, one of his companions decided to draw the monster's attention while Kale rescued Gordon. The problem was that he only had healing magic, because he had spent all his skill points increasing his attack power and never learned paralysis cure. After being scolded for making such a reckless choice, he was ordered to take Gordon somewhere safe and keep using healing magic until he recovered. The paralysis caused by Mad Head's poison would naturally disappear after about 3 minutes. If they could survive until then, healing magic would be enough to keep him alive. While waiting for Gordon to recover, the protagonist decided to face Mad Head alone. The others believed that an adventurer at such a low level had no chance and insisted that they escape before it was too late. After all, if he died, they would all become the next targets. Even so, he stood his ground. His level was only 16, while Mad Head was level 40. A single mistake would be enough to cost him his life. Under immense pressure, he continued analyzing the enemy's movements. The situation was as bad as it could get, as they were facing an extremely powerful opponent without any preparation. It was exactly the kind of battle they wanted to avoid. But it was also a high-risk, high-reward opportunity that would put all of his abilities to the test. Those watching the fight could hardly believe what they were seeing. Some compared the protagonist to a heavy machine fighting the monster on equal terms, while others said it was a true miracle that he was still alive. Realizing that simply dodging the attacks would not be enough, he decided to go on the offensive. Since his basic swordsmanship had reached level 5, he unlocked the grab skill, a technique that uses the flat side of the sword for close-range attacks. Although many considered the skill useless because it reduced the weapon's reach, it dealt excellent damage against enemies with high defense. Even so, winning would not be easy. Mad Head began following every one of his movements, showing that the real battle was only beginning. Suddenly, Gordon appeared and defeated the beast with a single strike. After the battle ended, Gordon admitted that everything had happened exactly as the protagonist had predicted. He then handed over the level 40 magic stone obtained after defeating the monster, saying it was worth a large amount of money and asking if he really intended to give it up. The protagonist confirmed that he did. Soon after, he also received the rare item dropped by the monster, the Shield of Madness. After checking its information, he discovered that it granted 25 defense points, had an estimated value of 3 million gold, and strengthened the next attack whenever it blocked a hit. Since the wall reversal skill required a successful block, the shield matched his fighting style perfectly. Even though he was impressed by its attributes, he considered that selling it for its high value might be the better option. Next, Gordon talked about his promotion. He guaranteed that he would tell the guild it would be a huge mistake not to increase the protagonist's rank, and stated that he should quickly be promoted to rank E. He also revealed that he had originally been assigned to observe him because of suspicions of cheating, but now he knew those suspicions were nothing more than a completely mistaken judgment. He made it clear that if anyone complained about the decision, he would handle the matter himself. A little later, another adventurer approached and asked if he also had any chance of receiving a promotion. He believed he had contributed during the mission as well and wanted to know if his performance was enough to increase his rank. However, Gordon gave a direct answer and explained that during the battle, he had been completely frozen by fear in the face of danger. According to him, someone who loses the ability to act during a critical situation was not yet ready to face greater challenges. Because of that, he stated that the adventurer did not deserve a promotion at that moment. Instead, he advised him to continue accepting missions suitable for his current level and use those experiences to improve his skills. After all, inside the dungeon, there were much stronger enemies and even more dangerous situations waiting for adventurers. After that conversation, it was time to divide the rewards obtained from the mission. First, the group received 130,000 gold coins as the main payment for their work. Then, they were given 10 white magic stones, which together had an estimated value of 200,000 gold coins. Finally, came the most valuable reward of all, the Mad Head Magic Stone, which after being officially registered became known as the Mad Head Magic Stone. This rare item was purchased for the impressive price of 600,000 gold coins. increasing the group's profits from the mission even further. When one of the adventurers realized the enormous value of the rewards, he was surprised and commented that the protagonist had earned more money than him during the same mission. To him, it was clear that facing powerful enemies and taking part in high-risk battles could truly bring great financial rewards. Even after the mission's success, some adventurers still remained suspicious of the protagonist. They could not fully accept the idea that he had defeated the mutated ghoul head alone, an enemy that should have been extremely difficult for someone at his level. Additionally, they remembered that the protagonist had already drawn attention before by turning in a high-level magic stone, something unusual for an adventurer who was still at the beginning of his journey. They also found it strange that a Beast Knight, a class mainly known for its resistance and defense, could defeat so many monsters one after another. The doubts began spreading among some members of the guild, but Gordon decided to end the discussion before it grew any further. He stated that questioning the protagonist's abilities was the same as questioning his own judgment, since he was the one who had evaluated his performance and personally approved his promotion. With Gordon's support, all the negative comments damaging the protagonist's reputation completely disappeared. Finally, he overcame this obstacle and was promoted to rank E Adventurer. This achievement represented much more than just a change in rank. Now, he would have access to new areas, could accept more difficult missions, and would have the opportunity to continue evolving in ways that were previously impossible. However, with this new freedom also came an important choice. With so many possibilities ahead of him, the protagonist needed to decide what his next goal would be, and which path he would follow to reach the power he desired. Now that he had reached rank E and could finally enter dungeons, the protagonist began seriously considering the possibility of using the forbidden technique. After all, it was one of the most powerful strategies he knew. However, there was a major problem. The strategy based on wall reversal depended on extremely high defense to work properly, and its effectiveness decreased as the challenges became harder. The technique could still help him during the early stages, but if he continued with the same skill distribution, his growth would become much slower. Over time, he would be forced to spend a huge amount of effort just to keep up with the progress of other adventurers. Because of that, he realized he needed to think about the future and find a way to strengthen his build before advancing any further. That was when he decided that, before making any final decision, it would be worth searching for an extremely important item: the Ibrakiru's Fang skill book. This book was considered a rare and valuable item because it was required to unlock a new skill tree. Finding it would not be simple, since few adventurers even had information about its location. Even so, the protagonist believed he had nothing to lose by trying to find it, as that item could completely change the direction of his evolution. He knew that a Beast Knight could only reach its true potential by combining two specific skills: Beast Damage Oath and Ibrakiru's Fang. These two abilities were considered essential to completing the true essence of that class. Without one of them, a Beast Knight would remain only an incomplete version of what it could become. At this stage of evolution, the Beast Knight stopped being merely a class focused on defense and endurance. However, it also did not become a class entirely focused on offense. Instead, it reached a rare balance between attack power and survival ability, creating a unique fighting style that transformed the user into a true human weapon. Among all the elements required for this evolution, Ibrakiru's Fang was considered the most important piece. This ability was the key that allowed the Beast Knight to unlock its hidden potential and surpass the normal limits of the class. While analyzing his options, the protagonist became even more determined to find the Ibrakiru's Fang skill book. He knew that without this item, his skill tree would remain incomplete, and he would never achieve the evolution he desired. His goal was to become someone truly powerful in the future, capable of facing stronger and stronger enemies and overcoming any challenge that appeared in his path. To achieve that, the book represented an essential step in his journey. The only major obstacle was that, besides being extremely rare, the Ibrakiru's Fang skill book also had a very high value. Obtaining it would require effort, patience, and perhaps even a large amount of resources. Even so, the protagonist knew that if he wanted to reach the top, he would need to take risks and pursue every possible opportunity to grow. He entered the shop and asked for 3 healing potions. The clerk informed him that the total price would be 72,000 gold coins. The cost was much higher than he remembered from the game, but there was no reason to complain. After accepting the purchase, he took the opportunity to ask a question. He wanted to know where he could find skill books. He had already searched several stores, but had not found a single one. The clerk explained that the 10 Knights basically served as a training stage until someone obtained the Iblicure mount. Without it, progressing was difficult. From his question, she concluded that he seemed like someone who had just chosen a class. Then came an even more surprising piece of information. The buying and selling of skill books was forbidden. Anyone who found a book could use it, but if they had no interest in it, the Adventurers Guild would purchase it. After that, those books were distributed to nobles and the church. That sounded absurd. Skill books were extremely rare items. In theory, they should have been traded among adventurers. They were not something anyone could simply obtain through effort alone. At that moment, he realized that the influence of nobles in this world was much greater than he had imagined. Even so, he never expected things to reach this point. If that was true, then the books found in the city of Rondalm probably ended up concentrated in the hands of the Edvan family. With few options left, he received a special piece of information. As a bonus for buying the potions, the clerk decided to recommend a place. It was a shop that traded Hagia items. Hagia was the name given to equipment taken from the bodies of deceased adventurers. This raised another question. Weren't inherited items supposed to be handed over to the Adventurers Guild? The answer came quickly. There was a silent agreement. The guild knew about these underground shops and chose to ignore them. Many adventurers depended on that trade to survive. Besides, even when official procedures were followed, much of the money ended up in the hands of nobles instead of reaching the families of the deceased. The same thing happened with skill books. Nobles bought these items for extremely low prices and simply stored them away. They had no idea about the struggles faced by ordinary adventurers. Hearing that, he realized how naive he had been. If he had not recovered his memories from his past life and followed the path that would lead him to become a provincial governor, he might have ended up thinking the same way. Before leaving, he received an important warning. The existence of that shop had to remain a secret from influential people. He assured her there would be no problems. After all, he had no intention of revealing that he was the son of that family. When he arrived at the indicated location, he wondered if he would really find skill books there. The answer came quickly. There were 5 copies available. One of them was weak armor. The shop owner noticed that this did not seem like a place for beginners. Even so, he asked for permission to examine the books. The merchant allowed him without any trouble. Then came the shock. One of the books cost 2 million gold coins. In the game, the price was about 500,000 gold coins lower. There, prices were determined by negotiations between players. In this world, everything indicated that the values were based on actual transactions. This strengthened his suspicion that the noble's monopoly was inflating the market. Then, the merchant showed him another copy. That one cost 3 million gold coins. The price seemed ridiculous, but the seller explained that this trade constantly operated on the edge of danger. The authorities pretended not to notice what was happening, but a single intervention from the wrong people could bring everything to an end. Even after examining the available options, the situation remained difficult. Even if he sold the Madness Shield, he would only have 3 million gold coins. That amount was nowhere near enough to buy truly rare books. Among the available items were Beginner Magic Drain, Magic Power Increase, Surprise Box, and Elemental Guard. There were valuable skills, but none of them were what he was looking for, until his eyes found the final book. Essential Skill Tree for Intermediate Species. Ibrocru's Fang. That was exactly the item he wanted. If he could obtain it, his situation would completely change. However, his excitement caught the merchant's attention, and she found it strange that someone showed so much interest in that book. Then the real problem appeared. The price was 50 million gold coins. He could barely believe that an item worth that much was being kept there without any guards protecting the place. The merchant answered calmly, if someone thought she was weak, they could try to challenge her. Not long before, she had defeated 5 opponents by herself. Even without having the necessary money, he made a request. He wanted the book to be reserved and not sold to anyone else. He promised that one day he would return with the 50 million gold coins. The merchant asked what she would receive in return. After thinking for a moment, she decided to accept his request. She had taken a liking to him. The book would be reserved, but there was one condition. The price would increase to 55 million gold coins. That would serve as a guarantee. With no other choice, he accepted. Now, he needed to gather 55 million gold coins. The amount was enormous. It was equivalent to around 60 runs of that raid mission. It became clear that high-level adventurers and experienced merchants had a completely different perspective on money. Emerald Cruz Fang was truly a rare skill tree. Even so, few people showed interest in it. Usually, only beast knights or individuals obsessed with combat searched for something like that. This also revealed another reality. If that skill already cost a fortune, even more powerful books must be worth absurd amounts. He needed to find an efficient way to become rich. Hunting rare items in dungeons seemed like a possibility, but there were obstacles. Beast knights did not have enough consistent damage. Defeating weak enemies repeatedly using wall reversal would take far too much time. Learning basic swordsmanship or a similar skill seemed like a solution. However, that would also be a waste, since those skills would lose their importance as soon as he obtained Emerald Cruz Fang. For that reason, he decided to avoid wasting skill points unnecessarily. After thinking for a while, another possibility came to mind. Beast Knights were unpopular, but their performance in the last raid mission had been excellent. If he could form a team with other adventurers, his strategic options would increase drastically. Maybe it was time to start looking for allies. While thinking about that, some memories crossed his mind. In one of them, someone volunteered to hold off the enemies while the others escaped. In another, someone reacted angrily whenever anyone questioned Elymas' abilities. Those memories reinforced his conclusion. Maybe forming alliances was truly necessary. Then another surprise appeared. A blood-stained sword appeared. The item was worth 2 million gold coins. Thanks to that, he would be able to live comfortably for a while. The discovery also proved something important. The abilities he possessed were truly producing results. Once again, his strategy had worked exactly as planned. The group was made up of swordsmen, thieves, and other experienced adventurers. After countless dungeon expeditions, they had finally obtained a rare sword. The group leader credited the success entirely to his own abilities, but not everyone seemed convinced. Some members believed that if they continued exploring the dungeon, the difference in each person's contribution would eventually become obvious. That was when the argument began. Luce was questioned about receiving a share of the profit from selling the sword. In the other's opinion, someone as weak as her should not receive a significant portion of the reward. Even so, she argued that she also risked her life on the front lines. Because of that, she believed she deserved at least a small percentage of the money earned, something around 1 or 200,000 gold coins. The response was harsh. The others claimed that she had no meaningful offensive abilities. According to them, her only role during battles was to attract or split the monster's attention. In practice, they considered her contribution insignificant. Luce tried to defend herself. She explained that she had not developed attack skills because she had invested her points into the fishing skill following Prain's previous recommendation. Even so, no one seemed sympathetic. She thought it was unfair to hear those accusations after helping the group for so long and after everyone had earned so much money. Prain then gave his own explanation. According to him, choosing the fishing skill was done based on the team's compatibility. However, as time passed, circumstances changed, and that decision no longer made sense. Right after that, he threw a bag of money at her. Inside were 100,000 gold coins. In his opinion, that was already more than enough. Besides, he claimed that he had been generous by keeping her in the group despite her weakness and lack of useful combat abilities. The attitude shocked some of the people present. It seemed that the huge amount of money earned from the rare sword had revealed the true nature of certain people. Reese also partially agreed with the decision. After all, no one in the group was struggling financially, and splitting such a large fortune with someone they considered useless seemed like a waste to them. Luce was left speechless. She apologized to Crane and Reese, but admitted that she could no longer continue in that situation. The money from the sword no longer mattered. The problem was something else. She had simply lost the desire to remain in that group. The others said goodbye without showing much concern. In their opinion, it would be difficult to find anyone willing to recruit an adventurer who could not properly grow because of a poor distribution of skills. Luz's situation was genuinely complicated. That world system had a severe limitation. To level up, someone needed to defeat monsters of the same level or higher. However, when someone invested points into skills that were inefficient in combat, fighting equal opponents became extremely difficult. Without enough offensive power, progress practically came to a halt. It was a common problem among adventurers who made mistakes when distributing their skill points. Many ended up stuck for years, unable to grow. While reflecting on this, someone heard Luz's story and began analyzing her abilities. At first, the situation seemed ordinary. However, after examining her skill tree, everything changed. The reaction was immediate. That combination did not seem useless. Quite the opposite. The person analyzing those skills was completely shocked. In his view, no one in their right mind would abandon someone with a skill set of that level. The more he analyzed it, the more certain he became. Luz possessed an extremely powerful skill tree, something her former companions had simply failed to see. Realizing this, he immediately ran after her. Without wasting time, he began apologizing for the way he had approached her. Then he made an unexpected request. He wanted her to hear his proposal. Luz was confused by his sudden reaction, but the surprise grew even more when he revealed his true intention. He wanted to invite her to form a group with him. While searching for new companions for future adventures, he had found exactly the person everyone else considered useless. Even so, the more he thought about it, the more certain he became that those people were completely wrong. They had no idea about the hidden potential inside that skill tree. And that was how the story of the girl from the same house began. A girl who carried a talent that no one had ever noticed. Elymas decided he would not let the situation continue that way and invited her to join his group. He then suggested splitting the rewards, giving Luz 8 shares and keeping only 2 for himself. Although it seemed like a small percentage for him, Elymas explained that, with the current arrangement, Luz would have a hard time improving. To his surprise, Luz immediately accepted the offer, saying that 8 for her and 2 for Elymas was perfectly fine. However, the other person there disagreed with the decision and questioned his choice. The situation soon caught the attention of those nearby, who wondered who this person was that had suddenly appeared. Elymas introduced himself and explained that he had heard Luz was thinking about leaving the group, so he decided to recruit her. The news surprised the other adventurers. They questioned whether Elymas was actually serious, since Luz had very low combat power and could barely increase her level. Even so, Elymas said that it was not a problem at all. The others simply warned him that he could not complain later because they had already told him about the situation. In their opinion, if Elymas was willing to take someone they considered useless, it would only save them from feeling guilty for kicking her out. So, they allowed her to leave with Elymas. Elymas, however, made it clear that he did not need their permission. After that, he started asking questions to get to know Luz better. He wanted to know her level and whether she had any other companions. Luz explained that she was level 23 and a beast knight who worked alone. Hearing that, Elymas realized he was dealing with an E-rank adventurer. For someone who was level 23 and followed the path of a solo beast knight, it seemed strange that she did not understand how much difficulty Luz had. In the eyes of the others, anyone with that much experience should have noticed her lack of ability. Even so, Elymas assured her that it was not a problem and that it would not be an obstacle. While they were talking, Race asked everyone to look at the situation calmly. In his opinion, there was no way a beast knight could reach level 23 completely on their own. He believed Elymas had probably been kicked out of some mysterious group or was simply trying to impress girls. In the end, he thought that the only reason behind Elymas' actions was to take advantage of Luz's reputation and abilities. Despite those suspicions, the situation ended up seeming perfect for everyone. If the group gained a bad reputation for abandoning someone who could not properly use her abilities, it could harm them. Thinking this way, they decided that leaving Luz in Elymas' care was the best option. Then, Elymas heard words that left him surprised. They said they had been hoping to find someone like him and asked him to take good care of Luce. Seeing that opportunity, Elma happily accepted. Luce thanked him for his help, and Elma replied that he was counting on her as well. Finally, after searching for so long, Elma had found his first member for the group. The scene then changes to a restaurant. Despite everything, Luce still carried insecurity inside her. Even after gaining a new companion, she kept wondering if she truly was not good enough. Elma tried to reassure her and explained that it did not matter that much. If Luce could defeat monsters using her skill tree, her level would no longer be a problem. After thinking about those words, Luce ended up asking an unexpected question. She wanted to know if Elma decided to help her because he had fallen in love with her at first sight. The question caught Elma off guard, and he quickly asked what she was talking about. Then, Elma changed the subject and asked about a specific skill. He wanted to confirm whether Luce really had the Great Cloud skill tree. Luce was surprised by the question, unable to understand how Elma knew about it. Elma then explained what dungeons were in the magical world. According to him, a dungeon was a nightmare created by the sleeping creator god Alzaros. For an eternity, Alzaros had created countless gods and worlds from nothing. However, after an unimaginable amount of time, even that absolute being eventually lost his sanity. Because of this, the very gods born from his creation had to seal him away to prevent his madness from destroying everything. Even trapped, Alzaros' nightmare continued to influence reality. From that distorted dream, portals appeared in the real world, bringing monstrous creatures and giving birth to dungeons. After hearing the explanation, Luce finally understood what that place was. That enormous opening existed because of Alzaros' dream. It was the entrance to the so-called Angel's Toy Box, a dungeon with a recommended level of 50. Faced with that challenge, Luce asked Elma if he was really okay with this. Then, she decided to reveal her true situation. She explained that it was something she usually did not show to other people because she was afraid of their reaction. To her surprise, Elma did not judge her. Luce believed she could trust him because she knew Elma was not the type of person who would intentionally spread that information. Besides, she thought it might be better for people to discover who she truly was from the beginning, before they built expectations and ended up disappointed later. That was the only offensive skill Luce possessed. On top of that, she could only use Desograft when she rolled a 6 on the dice, making the ability extremely dependent on luck. Realizing her own limitations, she began blaming herself for her previous choices. She believed she should have invested her points into Fool's Limit and attack power increase, and she could not believe she had made such a huge mistake during her growth. Even so, Elma showed no concern. On the contrary, he stated that Luce was necessary for the group. Not fully understanding what she should think about the situation, Luce asked what she was supposed to make of it. She still had trouble understanding more technical explanations and asked Elma to explain things in a simpler and more direct way. After thinking for a moment, Elma decided to explain it differently. He asked if the situation could be considered cowardly, and Luce finally understood his point. Elma's strategy was clear. During that exploration, they could easily gather 30 million gold and help Luce reach level 30. When Luce asked why he was so confident, Elma explained that there was no need to worry. Once they entered the dungeon, he explained that although it had a recommended level of 50, he already knew information about the monsters that appeared there. Because of that, he believed they would not face any major danger at that moment. At first, their goal would simply be to level up on the lower floors. Elma would be responsible for drawing the enemy's attention, while Luce would defeat the monsters using the iron and stone knife she had received. For Luce, reaching that point had been her own choice. Besides, after receiving something so valuable, she could not simply give up. The iron and stone knife had +3 attack power and a market value of 550,000 gold. It was an excellent weapon against enemies with high resistance because, when it landed a hit, it reduced the opponent's defense by 15% and also dealt additional damage. Luce then decided to accept that responsibility. She told Elma that she would do her best to live up to the trust and expectations placed on her. Seeing her determination, Elma was satisfied and praised her motivation. Elymas also decided that he would protect Luz with all his strength as a way to repay the luck they had with obtaining the iron and stone knife. To him, protecting his companion was exactly the role he was supposed to fulfill in the group. As they continued through the dungeon, Elymas noticed an enemy ahead. It was the Tsujihagi bear. Despite its cute appearance, that monster was far from harmless. Its attack power reached 22, and a normal hit would probably still be manageable for Luz. However, if it landed a critical attack, she definitely would not be able to withstand it. Elymas then explained his strategy. If they could break the monster's resistance at the exact moment it started attacking, they would be able to completely interrupt its movement. Luz was impressed and asked how Elymas had figured that out so quickly. She even asked if Elymas liked Tsujihagi bears, but Elymas explained that it was not exactly that. He was simply analyzing the monster's attack patterns and studying its behavior. After understanding the right timing, Elymas gave Luz the order. She needed to attack from the side and finish the enemy. Luz confirmed that she would do it and prepared to move forward. Before the attack, Elymas only warned her to be careful of the monster's claws and bite. Luz replied that she was ready. Elymas explained that it was a skill he had obtained using the points received from Mad Head. His goal was to use that ability to help Luz increase her level faster. Before they advanced, he warned that the enemy's shadows could reach farther than they appeared, so Luz needed to be careful. Luz confirmed that she understood, but she soon became confused. She remembered that Elymas had warned her about the monster's claws and bites. However, when she looked at the Tsujihagi bear, she realized it did not even have claws or fangs. Unable to understand the situation, she asked how that was possible. Even so, the battle continued. The monster attacked aggressively, while Elymas maintained a strong defense. He blocked the attacks and prevented Luz from being hit. Luz moved forward with determination and managed to land the finishing blow. Although it was considered a low-level monster, the Tsujihagi bear was far from being as harmless as its cute appearance suggested. After the victory, Elymas asked Luz how much her level had increased. The entire purpose of the exploration was her growth, and seeing Luz's progress made it clear that the strategy was working. Shortly after, another creature appeared in their path. It was Mimia. Luz noticed the new enemy and immediately warned Elymas. At the same time, she started thinking that she might not have enough space to store new equipment. However, Elymas explained that it was not a problem. That equipment had only been obtained to help with leveling up, so there was no need to worry too much about storage space. Besides, they would still defeat many more monsters, and a new item would certainly appear soon. Elymas realized that the previous method had worked again and decided to repeat the strategy. Luz confirmed that she was ready, and the two continued the battle. The same result happened once again. Another item dropped from the enemy, and this time they were even luckier. They did not just obtain one piece of equipment. Two appeared in a row. Among the items they found was the rare defense shield plus 12, equipment with a market value of 200,000 gold. Its appearance was unusual, as it looked like a small cute teddy bear standing upright, but its defensive properties were extremely valuable. Elymas then commented that the situation proved it had been a good decision to bring Luz with him. However, Luz asked if Elymas really intended to use that shield. Elymas was surprised by the question and replied that, thinking about it, maybe it would be better to keep it for now. The choice seemed reasonable, and Luz agreed that it was probably the best decision. Even so, Elymas started to find the situation strange. Getting that item so many times in a row did not seem normal. She began to wonder if her evaluation of the item drop rate was wrong. Then, suddenly, she realized something important. The Manky Nylon that Luz possessed had a special ability that increased her luck by 500%. If Luz's incredible luck from the beginning was not just a coincidence, then all those unexpected results started to make sense. Elymas began to consider that this might have been the reason why the blood-stained sword had appeared. The chain of events seemed too much of a coincidence to ignore, and everything suggested that Luz's luck was truly influencing the results. Luz, on the other hand, became extremely excited by the discovery. She believed that everything had happened because of her own ability and started celebrating, proud of her talent. Even so, Elymas was still not completely convinced. She remained suspicious of that explanation. If that ability was really so powerful, why had Klein and the others never noticed that the item acquisition rate increased so much? Then, Elma began thinking of possible answers. Maybe Klein and the others were simply too weak to use a weapon like that. Besides, since it was only their first adventurer group, perhaps they had not paid much attention to the value of the items they found. Another important point was that there was very little information available about the monsters in that world. Maybe, due to a lack of knowledge, they had simply considered such a high item drop rate normal from the beginning and never realized that something unusual was happening. While Elma was thinking about all of this, Luce excitedly asked if she had been useful to him. She then revealed a major achievement. She had reached level 20. Hearing that, Elma was surprised and asked when it had happened. Now that Luce had reached that level, Elma decided it was time to pursue the real goal of their exploration. Their next target would be the rare monster known as Narakanrana. Dana was the first frog monster Welma managed to defeat in that world. It was a common, low-level creature frequently found throughout the magical world. Of all the different types of Dana, their current target was the Narakan Dana. Given their situation, that dungeon was practically the only place where they could continue hunting. The Narakan Dana had a golden appearance and was extremely rare. Even so, defeating one was well worth the effort, since there was a high chance of obtaining extremely valuable items. Despite being a high-level creature, its physical strength and magical power were low. On top of that, it had no offensive abilities. In other words, it was the perfect target. It had little combat ability, gave a good amount of experience, and could provide excellent rewards. Monsters like this were known among players as golden pots. There were several similar bonus creatures, and many players considered hunting them one of the most enjoyable activities in Magic World. The Narakan Dana usually appeared in a specific area of the Angel's Toy Box dungeon. There were certain paths where the chances of finding one were higher, and Welma knew practically every creature that could appear in that area. Luce had also heard stories about the monster. According to those stories, the Narakan Dana was so fast that almost no one could keep up with it, even when an adventurer managed to hit it. The attacks seemed to cause no damage at all. Some adventurers would chase it for too long and end up attracting other monsters. By the time they realized the danger, they were already surrounded with no way to escape. Some of them may have even lost their lives trying to capture it. This made one important difference between that world and the game they knew very clear. There, dying did not simply mean returning to a previous point and trying again. Death was permanent. Because of this, adventurers usually built their characters with survival as their top priority, and facing a Narakan Dana was far from an easy task. The Narakan Dana's speed reached 67, while its defense was an impressive 200. On top of that, the monster was completely immune to elemental attacks, negative effects, status ailments, and debuffs. The knife Vilba had given Welma could work against enemies with high defense, since iron attacks had some effectiveness against iron. However, in this case, that probably wouldn't be enough. In fact, there was an even bigger problem. Welma probably wouldn't even be able to catch the monster by running. The Narakan Dana was more than twice as fast as Luce, who was already known as an extremely fast beast knight. Compared to Welma's own speed, the difference was even greater. Its defense of 200 made things even more difficult, even if the counterattack using Castle Wall was executed perfectly. No damage would be able to get through that defense. The counterattack's penetration effect ignored only 15% of the enemy's defense, which made almost no difference against such an absurdly high defense. For a moment, it seemed like there was no solution to the situation. That's when Welma remembered 3-stage withering. Even a stance that appeared to be perfect always had some vulnerable point. The real problem was figuring out whether Welma had any ability capable of reaching those weak points. Luce didn't know of any Beast Knight ability that could accomplish that. Because of this, Welma decided to rely on her help. Luce was surprised to learn that she would be part of the plan, but she agreed to help. Since she had leveled up using the Beast Knight class, Luce should have accumulated 8 skill points. The instruction was simple: put all 8 points into Fool's Acrobatics. The 2 abilities gained this way would be essential for subduing the Narakan Dana. Luce was happy that Welma trusted her so much. although she admitted that she didn't have the kind of power needed to accomplish something so impressive. Even so, she decided to keep following Elymas and take part in the hunt. The first monster they encountered wasn't the target they were looking for, so they decided not to chase it, since cornering it could cause it to call other monsters for help. Besides, they could also gain a few levels by defeating other creatures. With Elymas' experience and the stability she showed during combat, it might be possible to gain around 3 levels that day. Even so, the Forbidden Formation remained the best choice for their current level. Fortunately, the monster they encountered didn't follow them. The real problem was still finding their target. The Narcandane's spawn rate was so low that even if they searched for another full day, they would probably find only 2 of them. Still, obtaining the Forbidden Formation Lana would make all the effort worthwhile. Even with Luce's exceptional luck, finding the creature wouldn't be easy. Because of this, Elymas made it clear that Luce could quit if she started feeling uncomfortable or dissatisfied with the situation. Luce, however, explained that she was curious and decided to keep following Elymas. This gave her even more confidence, and she declared that she would hunt 100, or even 1,000, Forbidden Formation Lanas. Luce's motivation was excellent, although there was one rather concerning consequence. If they actually managed to obtain that many, prices in Rondalm would probably skyrocket. Then, something caught Elymas and Luce's attention. The Forbidden Formation Lana had appeared, and this time, it showed up much earlier than expected. Luce became nervous as soon as she noticed the creature, but Elymas ordered her to take a deep breath and stay calm. During the hunt for this monster, losing focus would be a serious mistake and could put the entire plan at risk. Meanwhile, Elymas had used the skill points she had earned from her previous levels to raise Fool's limit to level 10. With that, she obtained the 2 abilities she had mentioned earlier, and the plan could finally begin. Luce was ordered to do exactly what they had agreed on, while Elymas waited at the designated spot. Luce's role was simple but extremely important. She had to lure the Forbidden Formation Lana toward Elymas. So, Luce began approaching the creature. For a few moments, it seemed like everything could go wrong. Even so, Luce took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and kept moving forward. When the right moment came, she made the creature move in the planned direction. The Forbidden Formation Lana had very specific behavior. Whenever an adventurer came within 4 meters of it, the creature would immediately start running away. That behavior was exactly what made the plan possible. The passage in Angel's toy box was exactly 4 meters wide. Even if the creature was positioned at one end, it couldn't simply pass by the adventurer and escape through the other side. There was only one condition for the strategy to work. The creature had to remain on the ground. The narrow passage made it impossible to get around the illusion. And because the Forbidden Formation Lana was extremely cowardly, it couldn't force itself to enter the illusion either. That was exactly the opening Elymas and Luce had been waiting for. The Forbidden Formation Lana had practically perfect defense. Because of this, effects like blindness or being transformed into an illusion didn't work against it. However, there was one important limitation. The creature couldn't see through the illusions created by doppelganger illusion. This was one of the few weaknesses they could exploit. Elymas noticed the opportunity and decided that this would be their way out. However, there was still another problem to solve. Shadow Grab also worked against the Forbidden Lana. But the real difficulty was actually hitting her. The passage was narrow, but Lana was 3 times faster than Elymas. To make matters worse, her shadow was no more than 50 centimeters long. Even so, there was no time to give up or look for another strategy. Elymas then remembered a magic stone she had bought along with the iron stones. The stone's healing effect was so weak that almost no one ever used it. But Elymas realized there was another way to take advantage of that property. The plan worked, and Elymas managed to trap the Forbidden Lana by her shadow. Luce celebrated as soon as she realized the creature had been successfully captured. Now, all they had to do was defeat it. The problem was that the only way to deal enough damage was with a critical hit. To land a critical hit, the attacker had to anticipate the enemy's movements and strike its core directly. When that happened, the attack dealt 1.5 times the normal damage and ignored half of the target's defense. Since Lana was trapped, Elymas would have plenty of time to attempt the attack. Even so, there was a major problem. Even a normal critical hit wouldn't be enough to completely break through the creature's defense. Because of that, Welma would once again need Luz's help. Landing a critical hit depended on a combination of skill and luck. In Welma's current condition, she could barely move properly, making it practically impossible to aim for the correct spot. Luz also had very little experience with critical hits. Under normal circumstances, it would have been impossible. But there was one ability that could solve the problem: Dice Thrust. Originally, it was one of Luz's abilities, and its effect depended on a random roll. A number between 1 and 6 was rolled, and each result produced a different effect. At first glance, the ability seemed terrible. It wasn't a powerful attack and simply distributed its damage randomly. Its average power was even lower than that of a normal attack, which was why many considered Dice Thrust useless. However, there was one possibility that completely changed its value. If Luz rolled a 6, the ability would activate Critical Awakening. With that result, her attack power would increase by 1.3 times, and the attack would automatically become a critical hit, finally creating a real chance of dealing enough damage to defeat the Forbidden Formation Lana. By combining the effect of Critical Awakening with the critical hit multiplier, Luz's attack would reach 1.95 times its normal power. In addition, the 15% penetration granted by the combination of iron and stone would be added to the 50% penetration provided by the critical hit. In the end, the attack would have 1.95 times its original power and ignore 65% of Lana's defense. It was an extremely specific and difficult combination to execute, but they finally had a real way to damage the creature. The situation also proved that no class or ability should be considered useless simply because other people couldn't see its true potential. An ability that seemed weak to Klein could become essential when used in the right situation and combined with other abilities. Once again, it became clear that Welma needed Luz's strength to complete the strategy, so she asked Luz to keep going and lend her power for this decisive moment. Luz accepted the request. She wanted to live up to Welma's expectations and prove that she had become a true adventurer. Now, everything depended on a single roll. Luz launched her attack, and the result was a critical hit. The combination worked exactly as planned. After the Forbidden Formation Lana was defeated, Elma gained enough experience to reach level 30, while Luz continued to level up as well. Shortly afterward, Welma reached level 30. The Narakandana really was an excellent source of experience, but its biggest advantage was still the items it could drop as rewards. Its drop rate was as high as 50%, making every defeated creature an opportunity to obtain extremely valuable items. Among the rewards they obtained was a Shining Lana Servitude, which granted plus 12 attack power and had an estimated historical value of 17 million gold coins. In addition, Welma and Luz also obtained a Shining Lana Exploration and a high-level piece of Lanagorod. I heard that you addicted to them